Hey there, and welcome back to B.Hooked. I'm really excited you're here with me today because we're going to be working on a brand new project, something I'm calling the Blooming Market Tote. And we're going to be using Lily Sugar and Cream Cotton for this project, and I find that it's a great product for this project because it's really durable, easy to find, and it's very affordable. You can get the complete supplies list over on my website at bhookedcrochet.com/bloomingtote. All you have to do is just type that into your browser, or you can find it linked in the video description below or up at the top corner of your screen. This project incorporates some diamond granny squares. We're going to have a look at how to crochet those first because we're going to have several of those to work up before we start working on the construction of the tote. So let's have a look at how to do that first. We're going to start off with the diamonds. These are made up of two different rounds. So we're going to work on round number 1 here. We'll go ahead and make a slip knot. Place that loop on your hook. And we're going to chain 3. And this is going to be the foundation or the center of our diamond. And then we'll find the first chain that we made. Stick your hook into that. We're going to slip stitch to form a ring. So pull that through the chain and then through the stitch. And then we're left with a little lump of yarn here. We have to kind of pull on the sides to open up and be able to see the middle. It kind of looks like a pretzel. What we want to do is find that very bottom little part of the pretzel. That's the center of the ring. Since we're working with a really small ring here, we're going to have to be a little bit creative and a little bit patient to be able to open up that center. Before we do though, we need to chain 6. And this chain 6 counts as 1 treble crochet and 2 chains. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Then we're going to treble crochet into the center of the ring, and I still have that little spot marked for me. You'll wrap the yarn around your hook twice to do the treble crochet, and I just kind of steady it with my finger there while I stick it through the center. Then I'll pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and one more time to finish that treble crochet stitch. Now we're just going to make a few treble crochets for this first round. We won't have any to deal with on the second round. We want to have a total of 2 here, so we want to go ahead and make 1 more. Then we're going to transition to double crochet stitches. We want to have 2 of these as well. And I'm kind of twisting and shoving my stitches over because we're going to make a lot of stitches here on this first round and things get a little bit snug. So make your double crochet. We're actually going to do that twice. And then we're going to make one of the soft corners. So right now we can't really tell where we are within the round. If I pull in this finished piece, this is the treble crochet that we just made, and this was the second, and then the 2 double crochets. Now we're at one of these, what I'm calling soft points here. We're going to do just a chain 1 to make that point. So you'll make 1 chain, and then we're going to start over with the repeat. So let's make 2 double crochets in the center of the ring. Then just continue to pull your stitches around, just get them as close as possible. And we're going to treble crochet 2 times. So we're working up to that second big point of the diamond. And we've done basically 1/2. And we finished 1/2 of the diamond. We need that big point at the top. And to do that, we're just going to chain 2 and then start all over again. Make 2 treble crochets in the center of the ring. Now scoot those down once again. We're going to follow that up with 2 double crochets. We're working up to that soft point now. Once you do one of these, you'll really get the hang of it, and it's easier to memorize the stitch pattern. Alright, so now we need that soft corner, so we'll chain 1. We're going to make 3 more stitches in this little space, so go ahead and make 2 double crochets first. Then the last stitch we'll make is a treble crochet. And then we want to find the 4th chain. So remember I said at the beginning this chain 6 counted as a treble and 2 chains. So we'll just count the 4th. So we have 1, 2, 3. This first one is always hidden down here below the stitches, so that's the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. So I'll stick my hook into that 4th chain, join with a slip stitch to finish off this round. Now we have just one more round to go. We're going to kick off round number 2 by making 5 chains. Now this chain 5 counts as 1 double crochet and 2 chains. So in this corner space here, we want to make 2 double crochets. We're actually going to finish up this corner when we come back around at the end. So for now, just make your 2 double crochets. And then we need to make 1 double crochet into each of the next 4. So we have 2 trebles and we have 2 doubles. We want to make 1 double crochet in each. Now don't forget this first treble has a tendency to be hidden underneath those 2 that we first created. So you want to make sure you get a stitch there so you're not dropping a stitch. And when you get to that soft corner, it's really easy to kind of overlook it, honestly, because we can't see that chain 1 very clearly. But this second round really defines this corner a little bit more. What we want to do for these soft corners, so this one here and the one over on the opposite side, is make 1 double crochet, chain 2, and 1 more double crochet, all in that same space. So there's my first double. I'm going to scooch it over just a little bit there, and then chain 2. Make 1 more double crochet in that space. Then we'll make 1 double crochet into each of the next 4. So again, this first one tends to get hidden under there, so I'll just scoot it over so I can really see to work my first stitch there. Now we're at one of the big points here, and we're going to work them similar to these soft corners, but just a little bit different. We'll do 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets, all in that same space. So there's my first 2, and I like to just move it over. That way it really does help the shaping of the diamond. We definitely want to block these, but that always helps when we're doing this as we go. I'll make 2 more double crochets in that same chain 2 space. Then 1 double crochet into each of the next 4. This part's all just a repeat from here. Now I'm at that soft point, so we'll do 1 double crochet, chain 2, 1 double crochet. Now 1 double crochet into each of the next 4. Now don't get lost here at the end of the round. We still need to make 1 double crochet. I'm going to put it right here. Things just work out this way because that chain there is a stitch for the corner here. So we need two double crochets, 2 chains to make up one of these big points or these big corners. And so that chain 3, the first part of that chain, is one of those double crochets, but we need 1 more in order to complete the round. So what I like to do is just work my hook into that chain 2 space from the previous round to make the double crochet. Then the last thing we need to do is join with a slip stitch to the 3rd chain. My first one here is just slightly hidden, so that's 1, 2, and 3. You'll just join with a slip stitch. And that's all you have to do for the diamond. So when you fasten off, you really don't need to leave yourself a long tail. We're just going to weave that in. So pull that tail through the loop on your hook to fasten it off. So now that you've seen how to work those diamonds, the next thing we need to do is crochet all of them to basically form the bottom of our tote. You'll work 5 diamonds in color A, 10 diamonds in color B, and 5 diamonds in color C. So the next thing we'll do after we have those crocheted is we'll join them together and we'll start working on the mesh, the sides, basically the whole construction, and then I'll show you how to join them together next. So when I'm ready to join the diamonds together, I like to lay the full shape out first for a couple of different reasons. One, so I make sure I'm getting the colors in the right place, but also so I can figure out the best approach to joining these. Now, you can really join and start joining wherever you'd like. So I'm going to pick up these 2 diamonds here to demonstrate how we're going to work them together. We'll grab color D and create a slip knot there. Now the first thing I want to do is find the 2 points, stick my hook in between those spaces, and chain 1. That's going to secure it into place. And we want to isolate just the center loop. So the loops of the stitch on each of the diamonds, the one that's right in the middle. So find your first double crochet on the one that's closest to you. So right here, stick your hook under that back loop, and then find your first stitch on your next one. Now you may have to kind of feel around for it, but it's this guy right here. I'll stick my hook under just that back loop of that one as well. And then I'll yarn over and pull through. We're slip stitching here, so I'll just pull it through once more. Now we'll do that for each of the stitches within these 2 diamonds before we move on to the next set. Now when you get to that big gap space, you'll just stick your hook in between, or just in the chain space, and you'll slip stitch again. And so it's going to lay this way. These 2 are going to be my next 2 groups. So I'm going to grab those, place them so that the wrong sides are facing in. And you really have to think about this. So they're going to lay this way. So these are the first 2 points. So I'll stick my hook into those 2 chain spaces and then slip stitch. So now all I did here was repeated what we saw for this section, for these 4 diamonds up here on that group. Now we can see we have a nice long line here that we can work up on each side. I'm going to continue on with that. We'll weave in the ends, hide them, and make sure everything is nice and tidy. So go ahead and finish joining all of your diamonds. We'll pick up at the beginning of round number 1. So this is what your tote looks like now after you've joined all of the diamonds together. You can tend to these ends now if you like, or you can put them off and save them until later. What I would recommend doing is weaving them in along the bottom side, like kind of within the seam here. That way you can hide them and it's nice and secure. To do round 1, you'll just want to pick any of the 5 points that we have to our star. We'll create a slip knot with color D. So you'll just place that new loop on your hook, pull it through the chain 2 space, and we're going to chain 3. This chain 3 is going to count as a double crochet, and what we need to do is make another double crochet in this chain 2 space, actually finish up this little point once we get back around to the end of the round. And then we're going to make 1 double crochet into each of the stitches that we see for the rest of this side of this diamond. We're not going to do a whole lot of shaping or anything like that for this round. The idea is that we have a nice dense round because we're going to transition to the mesh. So when we have a straight edge here, like we have from here to here, we're just going to make 1 double crochet into each stitch, and then when we get to these chain 2 spaces, we're going to make 1 in each of those chain 2 spaces. Now when I get down to here, I want to show you how to work the double crochet 2 together, because we're going to kind of decrease so that we can maintain this shape. And then of course when we get to the point, we're going to work 3 double crochets in the point. So I'm going to get myself to the point where I can show you that double crochet 2 together. All right, now every time you reach one of these little indents here where we're transitioning from one point to the next, we're going to do a double crochet 2 together with the 2 chain 2 spaces that we see here. So go ahead and yarn over, insert your hook into the first chain 2 space, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2. It's basically like we just did the first part of the double crochet. Then we'll yarn over again, insert your hook into the next chain 2 space, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2. Now you'll have 3 loops on your hook, so go ahead and yarn over and pull through all 3. And so that's the double crochet 2 together. We've decreased these 2 into 1. We've done a little bit of shaping along the way, and now I'll just make 1 double crochet into each stitch until I get to this big point right here. I'll work 3 double crochets in there, and that's actually the repeat for round number 1. So when you've made it all the way back around, we still have 1 more double crochet to add at this top point, or this first point that we worked, because we had the chain 3 which counted as the first, we made a second one, and now we just need that third. So in order to join to finish the end, we want to find that third chain, stick your hook in there and just slip stitch. Now we can fasten off color D and grab color E. We're going to work on the mesh next. Once you get to the end of round number 1, you should have a total of 180 stitches all the way around. If you're off by a few, it's really not a big deal. You really just want to make sure that whatever the total number of stitches you have in your round, that it's a multiple of 4, because that's what we're going to use for round number 2 when we start the mesh. So the next thing you want to do is grab color E, and you'll create a slip knot, and you can fasten on in any stitch. I'm just going to fasten on just right in the middle here. Place that loop on your hook, pull that through, and chain 1. Now this chain 1 I'm not counting as a stitch because they're a little harder to work back in. So what I want to do just for this one is make a single crochet in the same stitch, and that is going to be my first stitch for this round. So I'll join with the slip stitch here when I make it all the way back around. And the mesh itself is really simple. We're going to be doing chains and single crochets. So go ahead and chain 3. Then we're going to skip 3 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, and single crochet in the 4th. And that's the repeat for this entire round. Chain 3, skip 3, single crochet in the 4th. So when you made it all the way around, you'll go ahead and make your chain 3, and you'll find that first stitch of the round, and you'll join with the slip stitch there. Now since we want the mesh to kind of be offset from one another, we need to shift our position. So I want my hook to start off here in this chain 3 space, and to do that I'll just make a slip stitch. Now when I do that, I want to go ahead and also make a single crochet. This is going to be the first single crochet for this new round. This is where I will join with a slip stitch when I get back around. And from here the repeat is the same. We're going to chain 3, although we have to do a lot less counting. Instead of skipping 3 or counting or anything like that, I'll just stick my hook underneath that next chain 3 space and single crochet. Chain 3, find that next space and single crochet. Now this is the repeat for all of the mesh. So every time you start the round, you'll be sure that you slip stitch into that chain 3 space that's right next to it. You'll make your first single crochet, and when you come back around, you'll join with the slip stitch to this stitch right here. Alright, now once your mesh measures about 10 inches from our starting edge here, then we're ready to go ahead and switch to color A. So I'm at the end of my round here. All I need to do is join with a slip stitch to this first single crochet. Now we can go ahead and fasten off. I'm just going to pull that tail through the loop on my hook, and I want to keep my join here in the same place. So I'm just going to place my hook there to remind me. Now grab color A, create a slip knot, place that on your hook, pull it just through that chain space. We'll chain 1, but that's not going to count as our first single crochet, so we'll go ahead and single crochet in that same space. Now our stitch pattern repeat from here is exactly the same. We're going to chain 3, skip over to the next chain 3 space, and single crochet there. And we'll work this repeat all the way until we get to the end of the round. Of course, we can join with the slip stitch here, and we want to work this until it measures about 2 inches. So we're adding an additional 2 inches of length here. So when you measure, start measuring at this round here. When your work measures about 2 inches, we'll have a look at how to add the band and the handles. Now once you have your second color added, and it's about 2 inches long, that ended up being about 4 rounds for me. We're going to continue on with the same color as we work the first round of the band. We basically want a little bit of a foundation for the handles, so it's a little bit more sturdy and not so flexible like the mesh is. So to get started on that, we'll go ahead and slip stitch into the next chain 3 space. We'll chain 1, which isn't going to count as our first single crochet. What we'll do is make 1 single crochet. This is going to be the first stitch of the round. You can place a marker there to help you see it when we come back around. We are going to join with the slip stitch there. But before we can move on to the repeat, we'll go ahead and make 2 more single crochets in this chain 3 space. Then we're going to jump over to the next chain 3 space and make 3 single crochets there. And if you're getting real technical on me here, you'll notice that we're not going to end up with the same stitch count because we're skipping these single crochets in between the chain 2 or the chain 3 space. The reason for that is because, as you noticed, the opening is very large for our tote and we want to just tighten things up a little bit. So we're going to drop a few stitches in the process. So we're just going to work 3 single crochets in each of the chain 3 gap spaces. And of course, when we come back to the end of the round, we'll join with the slip stitch there and we're going to transition to color B. So here I've made it to the end of my round. I want to join with the slip stitch, but I'm not going to work the full stitch because we're going to do a color change. So just pull the yarn through the stitch and leave it there. We're going to pick up color B next. You can create a slip knot here if you'd like, and then use that to pull through those 2 loops. And then what I like to do here in the back, I'm going to trim this color A and just go ahead and tie a knot here. Now the repeat from here on out is really quite simple. We're going to make a chain 1, which will not count as our first stitch. Instead, we're going to single crochet in the first or in that same space and make 1 single crochet in every stitch. We're going to do this for 2 rounds total with color B. Then we'll change color the same way that we just saw before. We're going to change to color C, work 2 rows in color C before we start working with the handles. So go ahead and get yourself to that point where you have 2 rounds of color B and 2 rounds of color C. We'll pick up next with the handles. So I finished now with my band repeat. I am preparing myself to make one final color transition for the handles using the same method as we did before. Alright, so the first round of the handles is probably the most involved out of all. The first thing that we want to do after we've joined, we'll chain 1 and we will single crochet in the same space. That's going to be the first stitch of the round. We're going to make a total of 18 single crochets before we start creating the hole for the handle. So this is going to be stitch number 1. We'll work 17 more. We're going to skip 30 stitches and single crochet in the next. That's going to be the first stitch now of this next little section. We need a total of 36 stitches, working back around to the other handle. So again, that first one is our first single crochet of this little set. Then when you have 36 stitches there, we'll create the other handle. So doing so by making 30 chains. We'll skip 30 chains and then we'll single crochet in the next. And then we'll make 1 single crochet into each remaining stitch. We should have a total of 17 after we've worked this first single crochet. Now I've made it to the end of my round. I've joined with a slip stitch to my first single crochet and we're ready to start our handles repeat. Now this next round of the handles is going to look and feel a little bit different, and that's because we have our chains for the handles. So basically the repeat is the same. We're going to make 1 single crochet into every stitch, but when you get to your chains, we'll go ahead and make 1 single crochet into every chain. We should maintain our stitch count of 132. You can try to keep track of that to make sure that things are going as planned. And we're going to repeat this for a total of 4 more rounds. We have 1 round already worked in color D. We want to add 4 rounds total so that our handles are a little bit thick. They have some substance to them, and they can hold up to whatever we put in our totes. So go ahead and work up these last 4 rounds of the handles. We'll meet back up briefly, and I'll show you how to work a very cool invisible join, so that way we can't see any visible little bump when we come back around to finish up the top of the bag. So I've finished now with my band repeat. I've joined with a slip stitch here to my first single crochet. I have one more little ninja trick to show you, and that's the invisible join. So as you can see, I just trimmed the working yarn, and rather than yarning over and pulling through this, I'm just going to pull up. Now typically we wouldn't leave it like this because it is a little less secure than, say, if we did yarn over and pull through, but we're going to take care of that with this join. So find the stitch where your tail is coming from and go to the one right next to it. Stick your needle under both legs of that stitch, pull it through, and then find the stitch or the V where your tail is coming from. So the tail is this bump right here, and then go into that stitch going towards the inside of the bag. So just in that last or that back leg, and pull it through, and when we do that, it gives us kind of like a faux stitch. So from here, all we need to do is weave in this tail. I like to do so right along the edge here. So of course you'll finish weaving in this end and any loose ends you might have from the bottom of the bag, and we're all set. Now that you've seen how to work the Blooming Market tote, course, just dive right in. Start with those diamonds first because you'll knock those out. We'll piece them together just as you saw, and then it comes together really fast after that because we're working with that mesh pattern. And once again, I want to remind you that all of the supplies list, the written instructions, more details, anything that maybe you didn't catch here in the tutorial, you can find over on my website, and that link once again is bhookedcrochet.com/blooming-tote. Now I also want to thank my sponsor, Yarnspirations, for allowing me to bring this project to you today. However, please know that just because they're sponsoring this tutorial doesn't mean I wouldn't already use this product for this tote, because like I said, it's extremely durable, it's very affordable, it's easy to find. It's by far one of my favorite cottons to use. Now before we go, I have one little question for you. I'm curious, this color palette that I chose here today is something that maybe I wouldn't have chosen otherwise. I tend to really love neutrals and grays and blues, and as you saw here, I'm using purple and green, and I threw a blue in there. I couldn't just steer away from it completely, but this color palette is a little bit out of my comfort zone, and what I found is that by doing that, I'm able to develop new favorites, new favorite color palettes. So I'm curious, what color palettes do you like to work with in the spring and summer months? Leave those in the comments below. I'd love to read them and maybe form some new favorite color palettes of my own through that process. So thank you for taking the time to do that. Thank you for joining me in this tutorial, and I'll see you next time.